Hello, friends, and welcome back to the No Holds Barred Witchcraft podcast. Chris is shaking his head because he doesn't like my intros because I sound like a creep.
One way to put
Anyway,
it.
I don't think I'm that creepy, to be fair. I know a lot creepier people than what I am. So today's podcast episode is called Fausty Witches, which sounds a lot like a certain Facebook group, wouldn't you agree? But I would say we can't talk about that. But basically, this episode is all about essentially those witchcraft Facebook groups, witchcraft on social media, and what a catastrophe it really is.
Well, I guess that's one way to put it, definitely. I think the problem is everybody goes to Facebook, as they would, because we're in the age of the internet, and, everybody feels that they should be able to find whatever information they need online. And I think lots of people go towards Facebook hoping to find, in air quotes, similar-minded people, and then find that it's full of witchy cat memes and... I almost dropped the W-bomb that quick. That'd have been a record, that would have. But yeah, the W word, and wanting to talk about, I can get around it this way. Scott Cunningham and his rubbish. There you go. Does that work?
Wasn't Scott Cunningham a Wiccan? Is that what you're talking about? Is the W word, what does the W word stand for? Because various, you say this a lot on this podcast. Does the W word, the listeners at home want to know, does the W word that you consider to be an insulting word, is the W word witch or something else? What is that W word? Because as we all know, I use it upon occasion, but my insulting word that I like to use that normally goes under the radar is the word neo-pagan.
Yeah.
Because I feel that the word neo-pagan is like Diet Coke. It's not really the real thing. You've got pagan, which is the full-fat, actual, religious, serious belief and work, and then you've got neo-pagan, which is kind of like the fake version of the energy drink. It's like when you go to one of those discount supermarkets at Aldi and they've got like such and such cola, because they can't call it Coca-Cola, it's just like Amst Cola.
Yeah.
Amstar Cola, that was it. I remember that from my childhood. On a Wednesday, getting off the bus on the way in from school, I'd get 2 family-sized chocolate bars, a cherry pie, and Amstar Cola. Anyway, this is devolving very quickly, much like most witchcraft Facebook groups.
Yeah.
You see, it's not just thrown together. It's not just thrown together. So,
it is that.
Are there any Facebook groups that you would like to use as an example here of either good positive things, positive ways of showing witchcraft on social media, or negative ones? I'll leave that for you because I've already been a social media troll and been kicked out of one within the past 2 days. So.
Well, obviously ours are fantastic. So, if you're a beginner and you want to actually learn something that isn't where you're not talked down to and told the only way is to go and buy a fake wand with a crystal on the end and wave it about a bit and cover it in ribbons, then, then our Witchcraft Live is probably a good starting point. Even if you hate everything we say, like, we openly invite you to do so. And then obviously... Yeah. The one that goes, that 10 levels further is No Holds Barred, which the name of this podcast has come from.
Yeah, this podcast actually came out of that, didn't it?
Is exactly that, where, we're not scared of you having an opinion, which seems to be, or what seems to be the problem with most of these Fausty Witches kind of situations, is because the second you challenge what somebody thinks... all of a sudden that's you being negative, or that's you being derogative to someone else. And you're like, well, no, you're allowed to have a difference of opinion. Witchcraft, in my book, has always very much been a solitary path, and because of that means that it's my version I don't need it to be everybody else's version. And my understanding of history is exactly that. Like, the only exceptions to that is when magic is included in organised religion. But even then, it's designed within a small group of people as opposed to mass produced, which is kind of the problem you get with why I hate the W word, which obviously, hate's a strong word. I dislike the association that comes with the likes of people like Scott Cunningham, which is a case of, there is one way to do it. This is how it is. The silliness with, I can use a clear quartz crystal for anything. And when you can use any crystal for anything, in my opinion. But no, it's a substitute for anything is having a clear quartz crystal, or rosemary. That's the other one. Rosemary is a substitution for any use. Like, you're just kind of like, really? No. How it works is you just develop a relationship with the tools that you use. I'm using the word tools very loosely. I mean, kind of herb or crystal.
I thought the Wiccans were the tools. Are the Wiccans not the tools? I think of them all as tools.
Okay.
Tools of the craft surely means, oh wow, I've been getting it wrong this whole time. Because I think of when people say the tools of the craft, I just have names of people that spring to mind. I don't really have like objects, but you're thinking of it as in like a tool, as in what's in a toolbox.
Well,
I'm just thinking of it as is the people I don't like.
Okay. Tools of the metaphysical trade.
Yeah. If you're one of those people that wants your hand held and you are starting out on your path, then fair enough, I can completely understand. There are groups for you out there that will help with that. We created the Witchcraft Live Facebook group for that specific
purpose,
reason and purpose. Now, a lot of the ones on Facebook that I find advertise that, but they're only interested in teaching you something very specific, and 90% of them aren't interested in teaching you anything at all. All they want you to do is post memes, and that's crap. Now, we launched the No Holds Barred Witchcraft podcast and Facebook group for the simple reason that we wanted practitioners that actually practice, that try to help educate others and get their own points across, that aren't always popular. We wanted to give them a place where they can express their points. It is literally the only Facebook group I'm aware of on Facebook that isn't got a rule, that, we don't have a rule everywhere that says, don't block the admins, word is law, all that kind of crap. We only have 3 rules. The rule number 1 is no whining wimps. Unlike other groups, we don't care about being kind or courteous. We prefer you to speak your mind. So if you have a mouth like a sewer, like I do, then you're probably going to speak like that.
Yeah.
Group rule number 2, witchcraft, occult and magical topics only. It's funny how we called it the No Holds Barred Witchcraft podcast and Facebook group, is because the group is about witchcraft. Okay, yeah, some people have a little bit of gossip every now and then, but at least that's about the occult community, so that kind of makes sense.
It's not going off and talking about cats or, random chats about, inviting people for imaginary tarot readings,
Yeah, and of course my favourite rule number 3, you will be insulted. Due to the fact that we don't police people's free speech, people will say something that you don't agree with. Now, what I don't like about witchcraft, and what I think you probably don't like about the association that comes with kind of Wicca and everything like that, is it seems like what they try to do, these people that spout and talk about the rule of 3 and, thou shalt not do any harm and all that crap, they're trying to make witchcraft a happy, new agey, love and light kind of thing. Yeah. And let's be fair, the origins of the word witch, witches weren't the good guys. Yes, the meaning of the words changed, and there are lots of other different types of magical practitioner that use the term witch and get called witches. Yeah, that's fair enough these days. But let's not forget that people that do abhorrent things and have slightly darker practices aren't witches. And there are people out there that do that. And although I don't think me or you necessarily condone that, what we don't want is we don't want to pretend that it doesn't exist,
No.
which is what you get a lot of other people. Because at the end of the day, if you pretend something doesn't exist, how is someone going to be able to find the tools to deal with that when they come up against it, compared to someone that's willing to have a conversation about it and explain how things work? That's why we don't really censor information at the end of the day, or try not to.
Well, yeah, the whole point is that at the end of the day, that everybody's path is their own. So the fact is, what our group allows you to do is have that conversation openly. And if you're not willing to be challenged on your belief system, then do you really truly believe it? Because that's part of it, is the fact that you should be able to give a response to the reason that you do something. It shouldn't just because Scott Cunningham told me that this needs to be done that way, or I must have a wand because everybody else has got one. Like, the whole point is that you're supposed to discover your way of working and to expand. And for me, it's kind of like, I don't like this idea that you've got to only speak to people that are within your same group. Like, I feel I learn way more from people that are, work in the Voodoo community or Hoodoo, because it's not like my practice. So
Yeah.
when I listen to them talking about how they've constructed a spell working, or, how they approached certain deities, like, to me, I'm kind of going, oh, okay, well, that's cool. Like, that's new. I wonder if I could take that tidbit there that actually goes, oh, actually, that could potentially improve that spell working that I've got planned next week. Or even 2-3 years down the line, when I've got a new client that is of that understanding. I suppose maybe that's why we're different, and maybe why that sometimes we upset certain people, is because we're open-minded enough to kind of go, well, okay, well, I don't really mind how you do it as long as you're getting results. And I'm happy to talk to you about how you got those results, because we work with clients so closely. So it's not about our paradigm, it's about theirs. So I think that's probably why we're different, in that idea of, well, why should we moderate them? It's a community. It's not my place to say, if someone wants to make an outlandish claim, like, I don't know, this rose quartz is the most important crystal I've ever owned, then they should be prepared to, if you've just put that statement out there, you should be prepared to respond to the criticism that you get from your peers. Like, to me, that's how I think of it, is they're all magical people in theory, so surely they all have an opinion and have the right to it. And surely that discussion is where we all learn. I get confused when
Interesting.
you just get browbeaten.
I mean, if you think about today's politics and stuff like that, you've got people that are more maybe emotionally led on what do I feel, and if my feelings are hurt, then that's a bad thing, and if whatever point that made my feelings hurt, that situation needs to be shut down. And then there's the very super logical, cold-hearted people.
Yeah, but that's easy because you're a robot.
Approach.
So because you're a robot, you don't have to think about feelings.
I'm the more sociopathic type. Okay, we've established that. But when you translate that into witchcraft practice and groups and helping other people on their path, you've got people that, because again witchcraft is practical, so if you are writing information, are you writing the information to help someone else because you're saying, well, I read in a book that this is what happens, and you're wrong because in such and such a book it says that this is the right ingredient to use? Or is it a case of you're writing from practical experiments? Are you saying, well, in my experience, I did this, this, and this is the results that happens, which has led me to believe this? What you'll find a lot of the disagreements and the angriness, it comes from people pretending to be academics.
Yeah.
So shoddy academia. So I've seen quite a
Yeah.
lot, even to a certain extent, on the No Holds Barred group sometimes, where you'll get one person that comes along and says something, and another person that says, well, no, historically that's not accurate because such and such, and we know that because of this archaeological evidence. And the person says, well, I've been doing channeled work and I've been working with this spirit or this deity or that kind of thing. Both are valid points.
Yeah, exactly.
But ultimately, I think to take a step back and think, well, this person's looking at it from an academic perspective, this person's looking at it from a personal gnosis and experiential perspective.
Providing
then
whoever
it's
they
kind
were
of a case
channeling
of,
was correct. So
yeah,
depending on
but
who they were actually
there's
channeling. Go on.
there's knowledge to be gained from both, though.
Yes.
And that's the thing. I think a lot of the times it can come to confrontation that you have to be the one, certainly with certain polarized people that get quite leery on some of these groups. It's like, no, I've got the right answer, or I've got the best answer, as opposed to, well, here's just a bunch of ideas. When someone else comes along, they're going to read through all these ideas and resonate with certain ones, as opposed to it thinking of answering a maths equation as this plus this equals this, and that, yes, the person needs this answer. Actually, it's kind of like, maybe it's a good idea not to try and come up with a definitive answer, which is what I was told off for, which is why I said what I said, so that I can, about someone that I want to back now.
Okay. We've reached that segment, guys and girls.
Yes.
Where Liam
Well,
gets
we're
to rant.
15 minutes in. We're 15 minutes in. We're over 15 minutes in. Therefore, I get to have a little rant. So, in order not to make this about us, we're going to take two examples of two different groups, okay?
Okay.
Now, you might have a good example of a group I quite like, and you've got the traditional Hedge Witches group. I don't know if you're a member of that.
Yeah, of course.
On Facebook. Yeah, that's quite a cool group. It's got a fair amount of people in. People offer up bits and pieces. Sometimes you'll get someone that does post the odd meme, but generally speaking, there's actual magical content in there and people sharing experiences and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You've got other ones where you've got now they're not called the Fausty Witches on Facebook, but they're called something similar. And the last couple of posts on there are the same as the last couple of posts last week and the week before and the week before that. And that is posting selfies of yourself, not doing anything to do with witchcraft. Posting memes, for example, give me a hell yeah if you can't wait till Halloween. Same thing they post over and over again. Of course, it's not Halloween yet, but they'll still post that in January. And then other posts. Always this, check out my familiar, and then they post a picture of their cat or dog. And we don't need to get started on the fact that your pet animal probably is not your familiar. We'll probably do an entire episode on that.
I think we could easily do an entire episode on that.
Yeah, it's just crazy that something advertises that, and I've tried to post things in both of those groups, and when I post something in the traditional Hedge Witches group, it starts a discussion amongst people talking about things, whether they agree with me or not. Some people don't agree with me. I'm not going to say they're wrong, but obviously I think they are. And so do all the gods and goddesses. But there we go. And then, whereas on the Fausty Witches, I've started conversations before and I get told that that's either too advanced, or that's not got anything to do with witchcraft at all, or that's too polarizing and that you shouldn't be, going down a specific path because there are people in the group which don't, and I'm not saying I'm posting ethical things, because I don't post moral or ethical dilemmas, because I think I'm being a sociopathic kind of person. I know that my personal political and other such opinions aren't necessarily going to be welcome, so I don't bother if that is pure magical. related. Now, you didn't get banned from that other group that we're not allowed to discuss, did you? But I got
No, but
banned
I
for
almost
basically.
did. I
You
almost
almost did.
just for defending you. Well, not specifically
Yeah.
you, but the actual right to have a discussion, which is the reason I almost got off, is the fact that the whole point was clearly to have a discussion. It was an interesting topic, seemed to be leaning in the kind of a strange direction, but that none of them seemed to be aware of that, where it was leading in that way. But it was particularly the setup that I didn't like. You know, the topic was it was how the topic was delivered. So a moderator actually said, you know, I'm going to post mine after you've all discussed it. So I was like, okay, well, I'm not a school child. This isn't my homework, and you don't necessarily have the correct answer. That's the whole point of a discussion, is that we're all grown ups. We're all going to talk about our experiences, and with this particular thing, choosing what you would put into said kit. Like, you know, that was supposed to surely be a discussion openly about, in that situation, what would you want to hand? Now, you know.
What was the original question? Because they won't know that, will they?
Oh, okay. I
Because I
wasn't
think
sure how much
you're
Am I doing far too
being far
political?
too generous.
Okay.
No, you're being far too generous because you've started it halfway through the conversation of where, you know, she said a lot worse things, the person that was moderating said group that we're not going to give the name of. And why don't you start at the beginning from what the original question that she asked was, and then take it from there? Because that might give a little bit more context, because I think that, you know, you've basically said, you've summed up her personality, I think.
Rather than the actual topic. Okay.
You've basically, in the eyes of the listeners, you might have be looking like you've just judged her based on one comment she's put, but actually this was one comment after several comments.
Okay, so the particular discussion thread was about, if you were to have a magical first aid kit, what items would you put in it? And lots of people put some really great ideas of what they would need to hand and what they thought they would. Others put some questionable ones. But at the end of the day, it was their first aid kit, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And obviously, to us, I think it kind of, which is why your comment particularly went on, which was, you were trying to say, well, depending on what you're trying to, you know, likely to be dealing with, and your particular skill level is going to depend on what you put in the kit. And obviously they didn't like the idea of any use of the term skill level, because that suggests that there were some witches in the group that are better than other witches, which surely is simply a fact of life. You know, somebody's been doing witchcraft for 3 weeks and someone that's been doing it for 30 years is going to have a different feeling about what they feel is necessary to go in an emergency kit. To be fair, what I think where the point was missed, I think, is people went to travel kit of kind of what would they need to take with them always, like what could they live without. It felt more like a desert island kind of question than I think it was supposed to be. Although, to be fair, Ben, basing it on what her answer was, maybe she did mean a desert island situation and should have specified that. You know, like the way that you hadn't specified about exactly what you meant about death masks. But let's not go down that one as well. Let's stick to the one.
That was a different thread. That was a different thread. That was the thread that originally got that specific admin to despise me, because she asked me a question and I answered it. And unfortunately, I gave too good an answer, which made her look bad. And you know what it gets like with people like that. But no. What would you put in your witch kit then? And what did you say what you'd put on the witch kit, or did she just?
I did say on a different part of the thread, like that one was actually me questioning why she had banned a person for having an opinion,
which was me,
which was you, but was actually a case of, so I was querying that, and actually put some very good arguments, of course, as to why this is a discussion and surely that's what it's for. Anyway, my answer to the question was essentially, well, I'd read, obviously lots of people had commented by then, so they'd noted something that I wouldn't have thought about, which I thought was really cool. which was the fact that some of them had commented on it being, well, I need to have something that's going to relax the client. So my answer was kind of like, well, that's interesting, but I suppose that's the difference between my response, which would be, the only things I probably would take are matches, because although I'm very skilled, starting a fire without matches it takes a lot more energy than is necessary. So I'd probably take matches and obviously some of my most used herbs, I guess, if I didn't know what the situation I was walking into. But I made the point that basically, to me, I think we'd miss the point of the analogy. For me, I expect if I've been called to an emergency, I'm expected to fix the problem. So to me, I think I'd gone, well, what would I need to turn up as an ambulance, rather than what I would need if I was turning up to do first aid. Because I wouldn't bandage someone up in order to deal with the problem. To me, it's like if the GP arrived, you expect the GP to actually make a diagnosis, or the paramedic to actually start to make the diagnosis, not just expect them to rock up and put a bandage and kiss a boo-boo and go, oh, that's fine, let me just go and get a professional for you, which is essentially what a first aid kit is for. Is you're supposed to be able to either fix a minor problem or hold off until the professionals arrive, which actually I think if she'd actually thought about the connotations of using the phrase first aid kit rather than a travel kit of what could I not live without, she'd have got a very different response. But because she used the word first aid kit, suggests that you were expected to fix some kind of problem when you arrived, which obviously led to why you made the points that you did. But
shall I read out shall I read out what happened?
What, you're going to read the whole thread?
I posted 3 comments and then got deleted. So I wonder if the listeners want to make up their own minds, because they don't know what this group is. So I'll read out the original post that said, put, a fun and practical thing is making a magical first aid kit. The point of this kit, if someone calls you up and asks you for magical help, you just grab it and go. Right, bearing in mind we do this for a living and we do have these kits.
Yeah.
I decided to put, after a bunch of people, because I wasn't the first to comment, a bunch of people put, well, I'd put pencil and a notebook, I'd put some candles, I'd put this oil, that oil. I thought, well, I've got to put something that isn't just rosemary and such essential oils, because no one's going to learn anything from that. I put, interesting. I guess tools and ingredients are mainly used to help the practitioner, much like stabilizers on a bike. So I guess you put things in the first aid kit which helps you with the types of magic you're weakest at. Unless you take the approach of teaching those who require the first aid, because of course in our situation we often will put tools in there which we know people will resonate with, because they'll have seen them before, which we don't necessarily like to use, but, in which case, I guess things which are as multi-purpose as possible, which the student can get a hold of easily. I always tend to make sure there are local plants and herbs in our first aid kits and such, so that the person that you're treating or working with can then go and get those ingredients because they've had practical experience with.
Yeah.
Now, I was told, why would a first aid kit be made up of things for types of magic that you're weakest at? Well, it's simple, because tools aid you,
Yeah. It's the whole point of a tool.
That's kind of the point,
if I could put a nail into a wall with my fist, I wouldn't need a hammer.
Exactly, yes, it's supposed to be easier. And then the admin just put, Liam is determined to look down his nose at others. Admin hat. Liam, Brian, read the rules. I told you in the other thread what rules you were in violation of. Why she didn't put them in this rule, why she had to put them in another thread, I have no idea, but there we go. Post again breaking any of the rules and you will be removed. So I thought, okay, I don't want to rock the boat any more than I already have. Clearly, I should probably give an example. So I put, the kit would comprise of tools and such which make the witch's job easier. But unfortunately, we are out of time, so we'll have to continue this on the Patreon.